Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, we have an update of something that is I don't know if you want to call it a mystery box. It's a head scratcher for me. We have lots of pharmacy operators dealing and wondering what's going on with DSCSA, the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. We know that in August, September, October, there were some changes in regulations and what was actually required of pharmacies operating in the United States. So today is important. We're also going to be talking about some specialty pharmacy tie into this. I want to welcome Joe Lipari from Systech to This Week in Pharmacy. Joe, I'm excited to have you here today.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's jump in. So back in August regarding the DSCSA, we know that the FDA has announced that they're going to delay the enforcement. Dominoes started falling in a different direction slightly. There was this kind of a sigh of relief for people to say, now I have more time to get ready. Let's kind of give our listeners an update about what's going on. And we call this, I guess, a stabilization period. But talk to me about what's going on, and then let's jump into Systech. I really want to understand this.
Sure. Stabilization period. So it is an interesting coined term for this period of time that now spans from November, right? We're looking at a year. So we should have gone live in November of 23. Like you were saying, we're going to have some enforcement discretion for a year. Now, here's the idea. The FDA generally expects that trading partners have systems, processes in place to meet the requirements, right? And so that's a quote directly from their stabilization period, documents that they put out, right? Now, the FDA recognizes that there are technical hurdles. They recognize there are operational issues. They recognize that patient safety, access to medicines is priority number one, right? And that's where the stabilization period comes in, right? Allowing some breathing room so that we don't grind the supply chain to a halt, especially on that sort of proverbial last mile of dispense, right? Getting medicines into the hands of patients, right? And so like I said, the FDA generally expects these systems to be in place. So what we're telling our clients is that you should already have something established, whether it's a system or a process or whatever, to meet those requirements. And I always use, here's my example I use, right? So I'm on the East Coast, I'm in New Jersey. It's winter. I enjoy skiing. Well, what do you got to do when you get new ski boots? You got to break them in, right? Every skier knows this, and every skier dreads it, right? That's why we hold on to our boots forever. If you didn't buy the boots yet, you're not in the breaking in period, right? If you didn't get a system in place or processes to meet the requirements, you're not in the stabilization period. So I think that's really one of the misconceptions. This is not more time to do what you already should have done. The expectation is you're working the kinks out.
It's a really good point. That's an excellent point. And I kind of want to dive into breaking this down and thinking of it. First of all, talk to me about the pathway. I mean, we talk about ingredients from different overseas issues. We talk about pedigree. We talk about creation, manufacturer, transportation, humidity, temperature. Now we get to the wholesaler. Wholesaler does what they need to do. They have their ERP systems. They have their tracking and systems. And then we have to send it to the pharmacy in order to get it to the patient. So talk to me, where does DSCSA come in, like in that track mapped out?
Yeah, sure. Kind of hits everything from start to finish there. So starts with marking on the products themselves. So you're talking about putting the fun little 2D codes that you're seeing on products now, which is nice. When we go to the pharmacies, we actually see these things, kind of like fruitier labor, right? The stuff that Systech has been doing for the better part of a decade and a half, which is managing the process on the packaging lines, getting serial numbers down to those lines, printing, controlling the devices and the printers on the lines, doing the aggregations, right? Associating the units to the cases and the cases to the pallets and getting all of that data ready, right? So that it can be pushed off to the trade partners. So you have the marking at the point of packaging. You have the transmission of data from the manufacturer to the wholesale channel or to the distribution channel or whoever the next downstream trade partner is, right? So now you have this electronic payload that rides along with the physical product as it moves from point to point through the supply chain, right? And it's a unique model, right? When you look at some of the other, you look at EU, right? EU FMD, which is the European version of pharmaceutical compliance, right? With serialization, where you're just sending data to a central system, right? It's kind of a bookend sort of model where you have sending it from the manufacturer, verifying it at the point of dispense. The US is more of a chain of custody model where we're pushing data forwards down the supply chain. And you can imagine, 90% of product flows through, give or take, right? Flows through the big three wholesalers. But there's a massive secondary network. And then when you move to the dispense side, we're talking 80, 90,000 different dispense locations, from hospitals to, your mom and pops to your massive retail chains. And so that's a lot of trade partners that need to, one, be able to receive this data and verify it, right? And number two, beyond just the happy path moving data downstream, you have a lot of other requirements about product tracing and product verification. What do you do when you have suspect product, and how do you make sure that the supply chain is safe, right? From a SOP perspective when you're dealing with, illegitimate or suspect, and that's all rolled up underneath the DSCSA, sort of umbrella for what supply chain partners need to do to meet the requirements.
The buzzwords, some of that I definitely don't understand. I know our listeners probably don't as well. DSCSA is kind of where I stop. I do understand what that means. I understand that is it a way to keep obviously the public safe, but let's break it down. Talk to me about leveraging a verification router service. What does that mean? VRS.
Yeah, sure. Well, VRS is, in its definition, is sort of an automated way to deal with exceptions, meaning, it's interesting. So exceptions in general. So Systech did a survey last year, and what we found was that 50% of the responders said they're currently unprepared to deal with what's going to happen in 2024, which is a massive ramp up on, hey, we have an issue here, we have an exception here, hey, we need to rework something here. And so the idea is that, with a VRS system, it's automating the operations behind identifying and verifying suspect product, right? Originally, it was for returns. So when, say, a distributor got a return back from a dispenser, right? Before they could put that product back on the shelf, so to speak, they'd have to verify it, meaning basically that data matrix with those 4 elements in it, right? That data matrix has a GTIN, which is the product identification, right? It's got a serial number, has a lot number, has an expiration date, right? You need to verify all 4 pieces of information. And that's done against the manufacturer's data. That's a key point there, that all of this verification is against the source of truth, which rides with the manufacturer. So that's expanded. And now we're talking about suspect and a legitimate product. So it's a system that automates all of that. You are standing there, Mr. Dispenser, with a product in your hand that you have flagged, right? And so number one, you need to verify the data on that label, right? Or on that carton. And you can do that by leveraging a system like a VRS. So Systech actually partnered. We talked a little bit about MetaLedger, who were recently or last year acquired by NAVP, right? So they built a verification router service, which is an electronic cloud-based, under the covers, it's blockchain, which everybody loves, right? And at the end of the day, what it does is it connects all of these trade partners that don't necessarily have a relationship with the manufacturer, right?
Yep.
So they could be a distributor, sure, but it could be downstream trade partner, like a hospital, right? And it connects them and it allows them to make verification requests saying, hey, I have this product, I need an answer, and you can get back a, hey, good, go, no go, good, bad, right? Answer from the system. And it's automated, meaning you don't have to pick up the phone, you don't have to send emails. It's not sort of a manual exchange of information between, hey, I have this product, who do I need to contact, number one? Then once I get a hold of somebody, what information do I need to give them? What is he giving me back? How am I documenting all of this, right? So it's a way to automate all of that. And the VRS components of sort of the DSCSA timelines actually went sort of live back in 2019. But again, we've seen multiple delays and multiple extensions. So we're kind of all looking forwards now to the 2024, sorry, timeline to have all of this go live.
Joe, talk to me about product in and of itself, because I'm going to shift gears and we're going to get into some discussions around the sensitivity around specialty meds and the expense in specialty meds. But before we do that, 100% of products that are being dispensed out of a pharmacy, does this fall into any of the policies and or stipulations of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act?
No, there are categories of products that are excluded from requiring compliance. Certain categories of pharma products have been flagged as not flagged, but have been categorized as exceptions. So it's not 100%. It's also not OTC. So even if a pharma company is making OTC product, that's also not part of the legislation as well.
Now, from the ingredient level, we know that that's included. There are some ingredients, depending on what ingredient it is, in order to make up that specific medication. I immediately start thinking of compounding. How does compounding pharmacy tie into the world of DSCSA?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there are even exceptions to the rule depending on what role you play. Interestingly enough, even during COVID, there were special dispensations made for drugs that were needed during times of crisis, so to speak, right? So your role in the supply chain also plays an interesting part in when you have to deal with compliance. So there was kind of a role of timelines for manufacturers versus, say, repackagers versus dispensers versus other roles in the supply chain. So the short answer to that is DSCSA touches everybody, but the enforcement was kind of staggered based on who you were in the supply chain.
That's good. Good answer, because I really sat there as a head scratcher when this was asked at a pharmacy conference that we were at, and sure enough, it came up, and I'm like, 100% of the products, yes or no? I couldn't get an answer, and then definitely compounding.
Yep.
That's very curious. I think compounding plays in so many places: pediatrics, hospital system, dentists, or dental, community, obviously. But so I'm glad that you've pointed that out. Let's go back to what I was saying. Specialty pharmacy. So medications that have to be moderated in ways, tracked in ways. There's REMS reporting that's very important to specific specialty meds. They're super expensive at times in comparison to what medications or pharmaceutical products you'd see in other sectors of pharmacy. How and why has Systech been so successful in the specialty pharmacy space?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Our experience in specialty really started in the last, call it 12 to 18 months. So Systech historically was very focused on the front end of the supply chain with the manufacturers, right? Those were our core customers for, the first 15 years of the company's life, right? And as we expanded into the sort of traceability side, being able to connect different types of trade partners became more important. And as I was saying, over the past, say, 12 to 18 months, now our manufacturing customers are focused on connecting a lot of their specialty networks. So a good portion of our of these manufacturing customers are, your biotechs, right, that are producing small batches. This is not massive volume. This is very tailored products, a lot on the oncology side, a lot on the specialty medicine side. And these are products that have a very simple supply chain, meaning they're going direct ship from manufacturers right to specialty pharmas. And so our experience is that the specialty pharmacies were written, not just pharmacy, specialty, from whether it's a hospital, whether it's a physician or some sort of clinic, right? They seemed to be ready first, meaning they were sort of on the, proactive side of regulatory compliance. And we were able to make a lot of these connections so that for a lot of these direct ship opportunities where, manufacturers are sending that product outside, the wholesale channels, we're able to make the connection so that we could actually send the data along too, which means they had systems on the other end that were able to receive, verify, do all the things that the dispense community needs to do. So they just seem to be, sort of very proactive, like I was saying, and at the forefront of leading the regulatory compliance sort of charge on the dispense side.
I think there's a lot of assumption from different players in the pharmaceutical and pharmacy care ecosystem. If I'm a specialty pharmacy, shout out to Amber Pharmacy, shout out to the NASP, obviously. We just did a special 4-part series with Shields Health Solutions, which is a specialty pharmacy. So when I'm thinking of these organizations, I would assume as a specialty pharmacy that my wholesaler was paying meticulous attention to issues that would tie in DSCSA and what could happen, the negative of what could happen if I'm not aligned correctly, if I'm using the right technology, if I don't have credentialing, if I don't understand verification. What should a specialty pharmacy be thinking about when it comes to implementing an actual traceability platform?
Yeah, good question. So beyond, hey, number one, you better make sure you can, one, understand, and two, meet the letter of the law, right? But really, it's more than that. It's, just sending data downstream is one piece of it. So with the dispense community, a lot of times there's even master data issues, meaning there are companies that don't understand they need this thing called a GLN, right? A location number. It says who you are who you are, right? And you have this number and it's registered and it's GS1 and all that good stuff, right? And we hear a lot that some of them just rely on their distributors to help them with this process, right? And I get that. I understand. It's a lot. And you just start thinking about like the mom and pop shop, and I go, the owner is the pharmacist, and he's also the janitor, and he's also, doing accounting, and I get all that.
Yep.
But when you think about relying on others versus having a system of your own, it really comes down to a debate about risk. And so it's how much risk are you willing to take on? So there's a lot of talk about portals, right? just all the distributors, think about any given pharmacy can be fed by how many different distributors, right? Depending on the products that are putting on the shelves,
Right.
Depending on the agreements they have with their trade partners. And so it puts the burden on the dispenser, right, or the pharmacy to manage multiple portals, multiple distributors, right? And that they all might not be built the same. And so I think what's really interesting is that you have the NABP really playing a major role here, and they're really positioning themselves well to fill a lot of these gaps for the dispense community. And we attended that event, the last event they had in Chicago over the summer, and you really hear from there was something like 20 plus 30 plus state boards of pharmacy that were attending, and you're hearing some of these people for the first time, right, talking about, hey, this is real, we really have to deal with this, right? And we're really late in the game, right? So it's critical that someone kind of stands up and says, hey, we're going to support this community, and we understand the breadth of the different types of personas in the dispense community, whether you're a prison or a clinic or a hospital system, or you're a massive retail outfit, right, with thousands of locations within the US. And so really, I guess it comes down to, I think, from my perspective, it's a risk, like I was saying, a risk decision. It's how much are you willing to risk on relying on trade partners versus taking on the ownership yourself and being able to clearly meet the letter of the law within your four walls of your organization.
Joe, this has been an awesome conversation, and really appreciate you giving us an update. I don't want this to be the last time that we talk. And actually, if you head on out to Assembia, which is April 29th through May 2nd in Vegas, make sure that you look us up. We'll be covering that show. We always cover that show. It's one of our favorites. And then NASP, National Association of Specialty Pharmacies, leading advocacy for specialty pharmacy. They are, I believe, in October of 2024. And that's when everybody should be biting their nails, because what is it? The date, the drop dead date is what? November what? 2024.
November 20. Oh God, you hit me off the top of my head. Is it 26, 27? Somewhere around Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I should know that off the top of my head.
27th.
27th, right? 27th.
Yep. Shout out to my sister over at Finn Partners. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, this has been fun. Thank you so much, Joe, for being on This Week in Pharmacy. And this plays into the number one purpose of our pharmacists. The number one reason to have pharmacists in pharmacy is safety. So this is all part of that safety. So I want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.